Alright guys, welcome back to Coach's Kitchen. This is going to be episode 4. Today we're going to get a little bit fancy. We're going to be making like a spicy shrimp stir fry. So the first thing that I did was actually yesterday I took some frozen shrimp, put it in a bag and put it in the refrigerator just to let it thaw out. So one thing that's going to happen when you do that is there's going to be a lot of water in the bag. So before you season the shrimp, you definitely need to dump out that excess water. So I'm going to set up my camera here. Really simple. Obviously, you just open up the bag, make sure no little shrimp fall out. Dump out that excess water, and you want to make sure you get all that out of there. And there's quite a bit in here. My freezer's pretty cold, so the shrimp was like covered in ice, so that's why we got so much moisture in here. But you definitely want to take your time and get all that water out of there. Alright, so now I've got a bag of shrimp. I'm going to season this up. And so we're going to make it pretty spicy. You can kind of adjust it to how you like. But the first thing I'm going to do is put some crushed red pepper flakes in there. Really standard, just like the same stuff you put on pizza. Now typically when you get a shaker of this, it's got the little holes and then it's got a big one you can open up. I like to open that thing up, really get some nice flakes in there. Not too many, because you can always add more later. We're going to take some salt, the Himalayan pink salt, the good stuff. Put this right here so you can see. Good little amount. The next one I have, you don't have to add this, but it's definitely going to add some extra flavor. This is a spicy garlic seasoning. Something I saw at Sprouts, I thought I would try it out. Just gonna give it a few shakes. That stuff comes out of there pretty fast. We'll take some paprika. And it might seem like I'm putting a lot of seasoning on here. It's because the seasoning isn't just going to season the shrimp. It's going to season our rice and vegetables that we're putting in there with it too. So it's okay if you put a lot of seasoning on there because it's going to kind of spread out and flavor the whole dish for us today. And then some cayenne pepper. Get a lot of that in there. Alright, and then the last thing we're going to put in, I've heard people say this a lot of ways, but I call it turmeric. This is something that I was first introduced to when I was in India. So you guys probably don't know this, but when I was 14 years old, I went over and spent a month in India. Definitely learned a lot of really cool things over there. I'm going to grab a spoon. I'm going to take like a nice generous spoonful. Pop it right in here with my shrimp. Zip up the bag. And you want to make sure that all the seasonings get onto every piece of shrimp. So you're just going to kind of mix it up. And make sure that every little shrimp has every different variety of seasoning on there. And you can kind of massage it into the shrimp. Make sure they're all covered. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put this bag back into the refrigerator for a little bit. If you wanted to start cooking right now, you could definitely do that. But it's definitely better to have some patience, because the longer you wait, the more that flavor is really going to get into the shrimp. So right now, that flavor is just kind of on the outside. The longer that you let this sit in the refrigerator, the deeper into the shrimp it's going to get, and the more flavor it's going to have. So I'm probably going to let it sit back in the fridge for maybe about an hour before I start cooking. Alright, so it's about 3 hours later. My shrimp's been in the refrigerator marinating, getting all that seasoning in there. So I'm just going to show you the setup, or at least what I use to set this up. So I've got my bag of seasoned shrimp. I've got some rice. Any rice will work. This is probably the best rice I've ever had. It's this Lundberg California white jasmine rice. This stuff is really good. We've got some baby spinach. Got some garlic. We've got an avocado, zucchini, red pepper, cutting board. We've got a pot for the rice, and then we've got a pan that we'll be doing our frying in. Alright, so it's not going to take us very long to fry up those shrimp and veggies. So the first thing we're going to do is get started with our rice. You want to add about a tablespoon of butter, which I've already got in there. And keep in mind that this is about enough to make 2 meals. So if you're cooking for a lot of people, you're going to need to make a little more than this. But since it's just me, I'm going to make a meal to eat now, and then a meal to save for later. And then for my single serving of rice, I'm going to put in 3/4 of a cup of water, half a cup of dry rice, and then I'm going to turn this up on high. So the first thing that you want to do when you're cooking rice is bring it to a boil. And then once it boils, you're going to cover it, turn it down on low, and you're going to let it simmer for about 15 minutes. So now that I've got that rice going, I'm going to come over here. So I took my red pepper, just cut off the top, hollowed it out. You can leave the seeds in there if you want to. I did not today. And then I took my zucchini and just cut the ends off. Alright, so I took that zucchini and just sliced it up into some nice thin slices, about this thick. It really doesn't matter how thick you do it though, it's not a big deal. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one and I'm going to do what's called quartering it. So if we go to our math lessons, we know that a quarter means a fourth. So we're going to cut this thing in half. And we know that half of a half is a fourth, because now we've got 4 equal pieces. Alright, so I'm going to set my phone down and do this to the rest of the pieces. Alright, so my rice has come to a boil. I'm going to go ahead and turn it down to low. Stir it up a little bit. And then you want to put a lid on there. It would be ideal if you had one that fit your pan perfectly. I don't, or a pot I should say. I don't have one for this pot, so I'm going to take an oversized one. Just make sure it's covered up and no steam is getting out. Okay. And then we want to set that to low. Set our timer for 15 minutes. And there we go. Alright, so with our red pepper, I just cut one little slice off there so I can show you. Okay. And you can do what's called dicing it. So dicing a pepper, so when you're going to make cuts this way. Sorry, it's a little hard to do with one hand. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to make my cuts this way. So we're just kind of crisscrossing it on there to make some tiny little squares. So I'm going to go ahead and set my phone down, dice up this pepper, and then I'll check back in with you. Alright, so my rice is just about done simmering. It's got 3 minutes left. After that 3 minutes is done, I'm going to need to take it off the heat and let it rest for 10 minutes. It's really important that you keep the lid on during that time too, so that it keeps all the steam in there, because that's what actually cooks the rice. So now that we've just got about 3 minutes left, so 13 minutes of total cooking time left, I'm going to go ahead and turn on this front burner. You can see high heat, but not all the way up. I'm going to grab my avocado oil. Pour some in here. just want to make sure that the pan is totally covered so that nothing's sticking on there. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to wait for a little bit until this heats up. So when I'm cooking, I really never follow like a strict recipe at all. I pretty much freestyle it and just kind of experiment and see what works for me. So you're going to find that a lot of times when you're cooking and you don't follow a recipe and you freestyle it, sometimes you make mistakes here and there, but it's no big deal. You just learn from them, keep moving on, and that's really how you become a better chef and get your own style as a chef. Alright, so my timer has gone off here. Means I can turn off the heat on my rice. And now I need to let it rest for 10 minutes. Alright, my oil is getting hot enough here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my garlic. Pop it in there. And then we're going to put in the vegetables. Might be hard to do with one hand here. We'll get it done though. There we go. Ooh, I can smell that garlic already. Alright, so we've got a nice colorful pan. You like to have a lot of color when you're cooking for a couple reasons. Reason number one, obviously it looks better and it's appetizing. You don't want to have like a bland plate with no color on it. But also you want to have diversity in what you're eating too, and put a lot of different like fruits and vegetables into your body, so that you make sure you don't have any deficiencies in your nutrition. Alright, so at this point we've got 6 minutes left. My veggies have had about 3.5 or 4 minutes in the pan. I've left it at that same temperature, kind of like a medium high. And you want to make sure that you're moving these veggies around just so they're cooking evenly. So you can use a spatula. You can get in there and mix them up. Once you've worked on your skills a little bit, if you don't want to use a spatula, I like to use the push-pull method. So that's really where you just push it forward, pull the pan back, and it's going to mix everything around like this. Okay. But my vegetables are not quite cooked all the way through, which is a good thing. That means it's time for me to add my shrimp. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my bag with the shrimp. I'm going to use 2 hands and get all that in there, and then I'll check back with you. Alright, I've got my shrimp in the pan. A couple key things to remember when you're cooking shrimp. It doesn't take a long time to cook shrimp. It's a little hard to tell because they're kind of orangish because of the seasoning right now. But typically when shrimp is not cooked, it's like a grayish color. And once it starts to be done, it'll have a pinkish color on there. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up a little. And you guys can see that my vegetables are starting to turn color too. Everything is becoming a little bit more yellow. That's because of the spicy garlic that we put in there, and also because of the turmeric. And so that's really going to transfer that flavor over to the vegetables too and season our whole dish for us. Alright, so we're getting really close to being done. If you get closer, you can see that the shrimp has changed color a little bit. It's become a little bit more whitish instead of that gray. It means it's getting really close to being finished. We've got about 20 seconds left on the rice. So what I'm going to do right now is cut up this avocado. And I'm actually going to change views to show you how I do that. Alright, so first thing, stand that avocado up. Cut all the way down until you can't cut anymore because you hit that seed. Work around, work around. Cut it into those 2 even pieces. Oh, and the seed just fell right out that time. Usually you've got to get it out of there, but it made it easy for me. You're going to take a spoon, take all the flesh out of there, boom, throw the skin in the trash. Same thing with the other side. Get all that flesh out of there, throw the skin in the trash, and I'm going to dice it. Okay, so remember we're cutting one direction, change directions, and then cut it the other way into those nice little square, actually I should say rectangle shaped pieces. All right, my rice is done cooking. My shrimp and veggies are done cooking. So the next thing I'm going to do is take a big handful of spinach. You want to do this toward the end after everything is cooked. This is just kind of like a little finishing touch. Pop that spinach on there. And then just mix it in. And in a minute or two, that spinach is going to get a lot smaller as it cooks. It kind of wilts and withers a little bit. But we're just going to make sure we mix that in there nice. Alright. And now for our rice. I'm going to use the same spatula because the flavors are all going to mix eventually anyway. So mix it up, move it around a little bit. So when you are plating this dish, you have two options. You could get out your plate, put your rice on first, and then put everything else over it. Or you could just take your rice and mix it directly into the pan, which is what I'm going to do so that all those flavors are able to combine and really soak into the rice before I start eating it. Alright, so I've mixed in my rice. I threw my avocado in there. I've turned the heat down to medium. And now I'm just going to mix everything together. And here we go. It took less than 30 minutes. We've got a really nice, healthy, nutritious, delicious, well-balanced meal ready to go. Alright, so I've got a whole plate full here. This is a pretty generous serving size. This is going to be a pretty big meal for me. And then in the pan, I've still got at least 2 meals that size, maybe 3. So even if you're cooking for a family of 3, 4, 5 people, you guys can definitely stretch this out and make it work for your family, even with that serving size that we made here. Get a final look at it. And you can see on the shrimp how we've got that pink sort of color that I'm talking about. That means that it's cooked all the way through. And now for the taste test. Let's see how we did here. Oh wow. So on that bite that I took, I tried to get a little piece of everything on there. And the first thing that I noticed was definitely that silky smooth avocado. And then after I was chewing for about 5, 6, 7 seconds, that little heat really kicked up from the spices that we used for our seasoning there. And now after I'm done and I've swallowed that bite, it's got that really nice spicy aftertaste. Woo! Get your nose and your eyes running a little bit if you're not used to the spice. So there we have it. We've got a spicy shrimp stir fry with vegetables, cooked up easy in about 30 minutes. So that might seem like something that's kind of intimidating, but if we really look at it step by step, that was not a very hard dish to make, and definitely a fan favorite. So everybody out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, Coach's Kitchen.